All right. Hello, everyone. How is it going? How do you like our new little commercial there on replay until we until we jump in to get started? So it's not top of the hour yet, but we have a very jam-packed webinar. And so I'm going to go ahead and before we even start, ask you to get in there and start participating in this Slido. And I've just noticed it can take a little while for people to get in there. So go ahead and get in there. Use your phone. There's just two questions in there. Please put that in the Slido or Barbara. Barbara, you must have been on my webinars before because you know I love chatting, and we will definitely do some chatting. To any of you with your AI note taker, we're going to have those removed just because we don't necessarily want them here in our webinar, if I'm being honest. All right, so put your answers in the Slido, pull up your phone. I think we're at the top of the hour. My team is going to keep that Slido going so that you can continue to use it while I'm introducing us. So there's two questions in there. There we go. We got some people coming in. Use the Slido. Use the Slido. I'm going to come back to it while I'm going to introduce myself and then we'll come back to it. I do love the chat as well. All right. My name is Catherine Mattice. I'm the founder and CEO of Civility Partners. Thank you for joining the webinar today. We have quite a turnout. We're here to talk about what research says about HR and how to fix it. So I have been battling on your behalf with the researchers who study workplace bullying for about 20 years in total. The research is very clear. HR is not helpful. I have yet to read one article that says HR was really helpful. Now, that's probably because those people don't, participate in research. Bullying was solved probably, so maybe they didn't really identify themselves as people who were raising their hands for a survey. But I have been attending the International Association on Workplace Bullying and Harassment for quite a few years, and it's usually mostly researchers there and a few of us practitioners, as they call us. And I'm there fighting the good fight on your behalf and sharing my experiences with HR, which is that HR very much cares about solving this problem. So this is me. I was an HR director a long time ago, former life. Look at how little and tiny I am. I had a front row seat to observe the damage that bullying was causing. I was internal HR. There was one toxic leader there. The culture was great otherwise, but this one toxic leader really single-handedly affected the culture and has affected a lot of people. I spent a lot of time dealing with complaints about him, and I also felt bullied. And so I experienced the damage it causes to the individuals as well. So fast forward all these years later, I've written Navigating a Toxic Workplace for Dummies. It's right here. It came out last year and it's on Amazon if you'd like it, if you'd like to buy it. And I have been cited over the years in a lot of really great places, putting my thoughts out there about how to solve bullying. And we've had over 300 clients over the years, and those are just some of them there on the top. So a little bit about what Civility Partners does. You should know, and you probably do know, culture is either accelerating your strategy or quietly undermining it. We help you measure, manage, and sustain a culture that creates a strategic advantage. We do that by helping our clients gain insight through discovery, whether it's a survey or listening sessions or interviews. We help companies create a roadmap to make change. Oh, thanks, Melissa. That was an old one. Back off. Thanks. We do a lot of upskilling. That is training, coaching, group coaching, conflict resolution, helping people learn the skills they need so that everybody can push the culture in the right direction. We get involved in updating operations and systems. Tara is asking for the QR code. Yes. And we can also assess the progress. We like to follow up with our work. Let me put this back here. We're getting some good answers. We've got almost 30 of you. Does that help, Tara? I had a friend named Tara, but she pronounced it Tara, T-A-R-A, and then we would call her Stara instead of Tara. So there you go. Oh, well, thanks, Melissa. Melissa's putting a good word for the my old book. Back off. I'm going to come back to the this slide here in a second. Oh, you do. Tara as well. Well, tell everybody that your new name is Stara, and there you go. So stick to the end here on this webinar. We've got some fun things for you. One is one of you lucky ducks, is going to win a Navigating a Toxic Workplace for Dummies book. And two of you are going to win one of our newest products. It's called Building a Speak Up Culture Toolkit. It's a download, and it is all of my slides and handout for building a speak up culture so you could deliver training to your workforce so that they can get involved in speaking up and getting, so you're not all on your own. Okay, so you got to stay to the end. Oh, Jenny's reminding me the way to win is that you have to be very interactive with me in the chat. The more interactive you are, the more likely you are to win. And what Jenny's doing is sort of keeping track of who's talking with me the most. And for those of you who are talking with me the most, she'll pick from that set of names. So I do love the chat. I do want you to interact with each other, and I do want game on. And I no, Tara, keep using the poll. I'm gonna come back to it. Stara, I'm sorry, we just had this conversation. I'm just gonna start calling you Stara. Okay, workplace bullying and toxic leadership are performance problems, right? And they're also risky. 52% of the day is spent talking, venting, and gossiping about toxicity. That's according to Canada's Safety Council. And I can tell you that by the end of my time at the organization where there was a bully, I absolutely fit right in the statistics. I was spending a whole lot of time venting to another director in the office. So here you had two, fairly high paid people were director levels, and we're both spending half our day talking about how frustrated we are. Back to the poll, Jenny, just put information in there. If you haven't done the poll, definitely get in there, and we'll be able to see the QR code again before we jump in. Okay, 18% of salary is lost due to job hunting while at work, according to MIT. That's when you have disengaged employees. The average spend on legal fees is $75,000. If it goes to trial, $250,000, and that doesn't include the average settlement, which is around $60,000. So if you spend $75,000 on legal fees plus $60,000 paid out to the employee, that is, expensive stuff. There's also a lot of hidden risks, as you know. Leadership time loss. So you think about all the informal conversations you've had about bullying, if there's bullying going on in your workplace or any sort of toxic behavior, disruptive behavior, you end up talking about it in the hallway with people. You end up talking about it in meetings, formal conversations. And then you have to think about the decision lag. If you have an hour leadership meeting once a week, for example, and for the next 8 weeks, you're talking about this one person for 5 to 10 to 20 minutes, what are you not talking about that should be getting talked about? What opportunity cost is there to that? And of course, there's an innovation cost. People are burned out. People aren't innovative when they're afraid of, their boss or somebody in the workplace. And of course, there's reputation damage as well. Hopefully, none of you work for these two companies. We've got low stars, low approval rate for the CEO. So Glassdoor, people can just talk on social media about you and your company. The net promoter score can go down. News outlets, lots of examples of that you may have seen in the last couple of weeks. Netflix had a big blunder. They fired somebody for being really honest during a trust exercise. He bought into the vulnerability, shared some vulnerable stuff, And then he was fired a couple weeks later. And of course, gossip within the industry. So, whatever industry you're in, if you're at different events, people start going, oh, I've heard that place is a horrible place to work, right? Thank you for keeping that chat going. Let me touch base here and see what some of these things. Fear is crippling. Managers get burned out too. You bring it home with you. Yes, you do. Alyssa, there's actually research that the marriages and parenting, there has been some research on like the correlation between being bullied and how much time you spend with your children at home. Marriages, I have seen over the years, videos or posts about people saying their marriage was over because they just couldn't get over the bullying and they were sort of obsessed with it, which makes sense. You feel all by yourself. You come home to vent to your spouse, and the spouse after a while says, I'm done with that. So another goodie for any of you, stay until the end. We'll give you another QR code at the end and you'll be able to get this one resource. It's called The Executive Dilemma. It's a 22-page ebook. Part of what's in there is a cost calculator, which can help you make a business case for addressing the behavior. So definitely hang on until the end for that. Yeah, HR needs a therapist because HR ends up being the therapist for everybody else, right? Adult children stop talking or responding. Yeah, I mean it's if you're being abused at work and you feel like you can't talk about it at work, you're going to talk about it with the people around you. And after a while, they start going, I don't want to be around this anymore. Tia, what happens when HR functions from an unethical rule bending space? One option is to try to go above that person's head. However, we all know that could be not a great idea either. So, something for us to talk about, Tia. I mean, in the end, my answer is often if you can't get the help you need from the organization you work for, be it from HR or your manager or leader, then it may be time to find another job. And I know that's easier said than done. And yes, Bob, you have to get to the root cause of why bullying is happening. And we are going to talk about that 100%. So one reason bullying happens is the culture, right? Culture gives everybody in your workplace information about how to behave. And people only behave in ways that they believe will be rewarded, ignored, or tolerated. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So we call this the oil model. This is how we look at culture. So if the organization is tolerating bad behavior, there's no accountability measures for respectful behavior. Maybe you have core values, but that there aren't competencies sitting on your in your performance management system. Maybe people start to feel like there's no safe space to report. So then individuals react to how the organization is behaving. So some of those people are going to be bad actors, and everybody else is going to live in fear of intervening. And the leadership is clearly communicating that results are valued over performance. And leaders also have a fear of speaking up. For example, these are the 5 craziest things I've heard from leaders over the years. We've gotten calls. We've gotten calls. Can you deliver a training session on assertiveness to the toxic leaders team so they can stand up for themselves? Yeah, no, we don't do that. Can you deliver a training on workplace bullying to everyone? Maybe they'll get the hint. So this is leaders living in fear as well. So people are afraid to speak up or stand up against the bully, and leaders are also afraid. These are the kinds of things that we hear so leaders can circumvent addressing the bullying. Yeah, right. They don't respond to hints. And what's going to happen with this one, I've had this one several times, and I always say to the person on the other end, just so I'm clear, you want to put 200 people or whatever, 100 people, whatever your staff is, you want to put them all in a room for 2 hours so they're not working. So you're going to stop production. That's an expensive training beyond my own fee. Everybody is not working. They're in the room because you hope this person will get the hint. And meanwhile, everybody in the audience is going to be thinking, I don't need this training on bullying. The only person who needs it is Bob over there. And Bob's the one person who's not taking it in, right? They don't take hints. I've also heard, can't they just work from home? Or I've heard this as a solution too. I like where it's already happened. Oh, we just have them working from home. I'm like, cool. So they can bully people via email or in solitude over a Zoom meeting where everybody else can't hear them. They've always been that way, or they treat everyone like that. Love that. Oh, don't worry. They treat everyone like that. We also hear coaching is expensive, and that boggles my mind because bullying is way more expensive than coaching. Okay, let's go back to your answers from the Slido. Let's see. Oh, good. We got a good chunk of people in there. So, in 1 to 2 words, what happens in an organization when employees stop trusting HR? Disengagement, they quit, low morale. Looks like a lot of you said quit. That's why that one's bigger. No trust, workplace dysfunction, it's ineffective. They retire, turmoil. Yeah. Secondly, we had a second question in there. Oh, no, maybe we didn't. Sorry about that. Let's see. One person's responding. While that's up, you go in there. There was a second question. It's not showing up in my slides. We're new to Slido, so I'm still learning. Okay, I'm going to check in with some of your comments here. What are some strategies for living in the emperor is wearing no clothes environment? Julie, the book is going to help you with that. That's a whole nother webinar around how to live in and cope in a toxic work environment. Let's see. We did recently with a dress code, delivered a warning to the whole team about wearing hats, and the offender came back wearing a hat the next day. Yeah, they don't think it's about them. They're used to, if you think about the messaging they've been getting, they're used to getting their way. They're used to being rewarded. They're used to violating rules and getting promotions and rewards and more team members. So they don't think the rules um, apply to them. And we're going to talk more about why that is. It's not just a them problem. Yeah, bullies are good at their jobs. Yeah, it's more costly to have the training for everyone, but here people are asking me to do that. Let's see. I hate that they've always been there and they really don't mean it. Yeah, it doesn't matter what their intent was. It's the impact, right? Um, yeah, that's just Patty. Stop being so sensitive. That's what I heard. My boss would say, "Why can't you just be the bigger person?" And I'm like, "Well, why can't you be the bigger person and talk to him? Why do I have to be the bigger person?" Why do the bullies get promoted? Oh, why they get promoted because they're great at their jobs. Let me see. I'm going to go back to the slide. Let's see if we can get those two questions pulled up. Oh, there we go. Why do you think HR is such a bad reputation? HR, employee, people. So those are the amount of times people used words. So it looks like they've, thank goodness for AI, put things in here. Upper management wants to keep them. People think HR just looks the other way. Yeah, I mean, I'm on a whole lot of, I get my Instagram is like flooded with toxic workplace stuff. My algorithm knows that that's what I'm paying attention to, and HR gets a lot of flack there too. It's not just in the research. Okay, let's talk about why people bully. So I'm going to play this little guy yelling while I talk through this. So people bully for 4 reasons. They live in a world of competence versus incompetence. They diagnose the people around them as competent or incompetent, and they diagnose themselves as competent or incompetent. And naturally, they believe themselves to be very competent. When they fear incompetence, they have anxiety, right? So, for example, you have a leader of a team, and this person feels like one or two people on their team is incompetent. They've diagnosed their team members that way. So now those team members, those incompetent team members, give them anxiety. And because they have low EQ, they don't manage their anxiety very well. And their anxiety, like any of us, anytime we experience fear, we engage in fight or flight, right? Well, they're fighting. Anytime they experience anxiety, they're fighting. So, what I've noticed with these individuals in coaching them, I've been coaching them for quite a while. I've coached many of them. They're fighting for competency because of something that happened in their life. And I'm not making excuses. I'm just explaining this to you. They um, have been fighting to appear competent their whole lives. And it just shows up in their behavior in the workplace. And then can you blame them for acting that way? Because as we've said, leaders promote them. The CEO promotes them. The CEO won't let you talk to them about it. The CEO won't talk to them. So they are getting this messaging that bullying gets their needs met. They're allowed to react this way, and in fact are rewarded for reacting that way. So they're not villains. And I know it's easy to villainize them, especially when you're at the receiving end. And I know it's easy to feel like it's on purpose. They are focused on competence. That's what's going on. Um, Let me see. Bullies are threatened by others. Yeah, they're threatened by incompetence. And again, I'm not excusing their behavior. I'm just explaining it to you. Okay. So here's the thing. We all assume, I like these little videos I got in here. We all assume that they're fully aware of the damage they're causing. Because you watch this lady, how could she not understand the damage she's causing? How could she not know that that she should stay seated, right? Duh. How could she not know that? But she has low EQ. We often assume that these individuals are focused on causing harm. We assume they're unable to change. Your leader assumes that asking this person to change will result in some sort of retaliation. Maybe they quit. Maybe they retaliate by quitting and taking a client, or the leaders live in real fear of them, just like the rest of us. And we say something's wrong with them. And I saw that in the chat. Some of you said, yeah, they do have personal issues. Don't we all, though, right? Here's the reality. The reality is that they're fully unaware of the impact that they have. And the impact, as we've discussed, is detrimental. So when I go in to coach people, the first time I meet with them, they're a little lost as to why they ended up in coaching. They know because I've coached the CEO how to present the coaching to them. But if you try to have empathy for these people, even though they don't have empathy for you, just think about that experience. They get paired with a coach who they are aware is a toxic work environment coach. And they're sitting there going, I don't understand why it got so bad. Why am I here with you? Now I'm in the principal's office and they're telling me I'm going to be fired if I don't change. So they have not been getting the right information to help them understand the impact they have. They're very aware that people find them difficult to work with, but they don't understand the true impact they're having. They're focused on getting the job done. And they are, in fact, willing and able to make big change. In all of the people I've coached over all of these years, I can count on one hand the number of people that I wasn't able to help, that I had to say, you clearly don't care how people feel, and so I can't coach you. 99% of the time, they do care. They are in need of accountability, just like all of us. And they are functioning in a system that lets their behavior thrive. So they do lack empathy. They do diagnose people as competent or incompetent, but they're in a system, right? They're in a system. Let me see. Yeah, no one's brought this to their attention. I love that the chat is going. I'm going to try to touch on some of these. They don't care about the negative impact, Angela says. And see, that's what I'm saying, Angela, is I find they do care. They're just unaware of how bad it is until they end up in a room with me. And all of us have bullying moments, Keith. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, Bob says handling this issue, we need to put some things in the hiring stage and maybe in the onboarding around how culture is. But again, they're living in a culture that's allowed this behavior to happen, right? So here's the research I mentioned. That's kind of why we're here, right? What's going on with HR? So there is a huge manual. It's like this thick. It's like a $400 book. It's all of the top researchers put this book together and have this is the third edition. Came out 2 years ago, I think. And there's a whole chapter on HR and all the problems HR brings. So this is a quote from that chapter. Targets of bullying often express great dissatisfaction with the support and help they hope to receive from HR. That same chapter, HR managers have frequently been portrayed as, at best, passive and uninformed in bullying cases, and at worst, an accomplice siding with the bully. HR managers tried to reframe the bullying situation and provide temporary solutions rather than addressing root causes or even tried to push away help-seeking targets. Employees often perceive HR as capable but unwilling to deal effectively with bullying. HR is described as complacent, complicit, or compounding harm. So yes, Julie, that's why we're all here. I am going to dig into this a little bit deeper, and I want to hear from you about it too in 1 second. Um, but in my experience, and I think in a lot of yours, and in the experience with all of the HR professionals I've spoken to over the years, either in sales calls, around coaching, or just in general, that HR doesn't have the power to put a stop to it, right? That was my experience. I was also being bullied to the point where I was depressed and got myself fired. So I was that HR person who was complacent. My boss told me just let it go, be the bigger person. He was my peer. It's not like I could order him around. He was my peer. So this is what I'm fighting for you all out there in the world. If you follow me on Instagram at all and on LinkedIn, and I'll have the LinkedIn at the end. A lot of my posts are around like, hey, everybody, stop hating on HR. It's not exactly their fault. So 81% of employers feel they're doing enough. And while conflict's different than bullying, this was a great stat in contrast that 36% of those who experience conflict feel it has been fully resolved. So we have a big disconnect between employers feeling like they're doing the right things and people feeling like it's getting conflict or getting done. So okay, let's use the chat. Why, why does it appear to all of these people that you're siding with the bully or that you're only offering temporary solutions? Yes, to some people, conflict is the same as bullying. It is not. The difference between conflict and conflict can certainly turn into bullying. Conflict happens when both people have a voice. Bullying happens when there's a psychological power imbalance. Okay, so let's see what some of your answers. Yeah, the bully is louder. Sometimes HR is the bully. That's true. True statement. Once you speak up, you're a target. Um, Rachel says, how do you manage underlying triggers caused by workplace dynamics that are perhaps predisposition to them emotionally and react immaturely? They are responsible for their behavior, but their good could be a boundary being crossed by peers. Rachel, that's a great question, and we could do a whole nother webinar about that too. The answer is that if you think about the oil, organizational behavior, individual behavior, and leadership team behavior, when we go into organizations to help them with their culture, we're focused on aligning those three things, and they're often misaligned. Another relevant example here is that you maybe do harassment prevention training every other year, and people have to sign an acknowledgement when they get hired that they understand the policy. So that's an organizational behavior. But then the leadership is allowing toxic behavior to happen when somebody is a high performer, and the message is it doesn't matter what you do, it's what you accomplish. And that's an example of misalignment. So now the individuals are left questioning, is harassment actually not okay? Or is this all just performative, right? Susan says, I try to circulate outside my office to check on staff dynamics. I think that's a great thing. And one of my tips for HR is always you have to develop relationships with everybody in the organization as best you can so that when somebody does come to you and when they trust that they can come to you because they know you, then they can have some faith in your ability to help them. And if you're not able to, and they know you, they'll understand why, or they'll understand that you did try to help them. Let's see. Stara says, I got physically ill in a temp assignment thanks to the assignment CEO bullying me. And oh, yep. And then you asked the agency to, or they asked a male replacement for you, and the bully backed off. So, that's a great example of discrimination, I would say. Yeah, HR can't protect employees. We don't have the power to change things. HR can only make meaningful change if there's culture. Yeah, we have to have permission because the person being harmed wants the bully fired by HR, and HR can't make that determination. That's a great point too, Michelle. I think I know, and we all know, a lot of times people come to HR with a complaint and they want it solved in the way that they think it should be solved. And you can't solve it that way. We all know you can do an investigation, but you can't share the results or what happened. And so people feel like they didn't do anything. Really, if somebody tells you about bullying or any bad behavior, they're just looking for it to stop. They don't need an update. They just want to make sure it stops. And if it does stop, then they'll know that you solved it. But you can't make it stop until you have permission, right? No clear policy breaks. Yeah, I find unions often, there isn't real opportunity to put people on a PIP when they're engaging in toxic behavior if they're in the union. I love that you're all talking and learning from each other too. The bully spreads the word that you're the problem. Yep. Okay. Why can't we all just get along and be civil? I know. Why can't we all just act like adults? Turns out we're not great as adults, right? Let me see. Yeah, they want all the details. Moneymakers get protected. Be like Dolly. Oh, rest in peace, Dolly. Okay. Thank you for all of your answers. So here are my answers. Here are some of my thoughts. Harassment's unlawful, and so we treat it as a compliance and risk management issue. You have a separate acknowledgement beyond your corporate policy handbook. There's a lot of training required in many states, but it's a compliance training. And so this is a hiccup I have with training, or a problem I have with harassment prevention training. It's because it's treated like a compliance issue, just like maybe a training on, I don't know, how to exit the building when there's a fire. It's like it feels really check the box, and your employers or your employees can feel that. So when you treat harassment prevention training like a training that's meant for compliance, that's not the right message either. So if you're going to do harassment prevention training well, it should start with a message around what behavior is tolerated and not tolerated. People don't not harass because of the policy. They don't harass when they have empathy. And so the way that we do harassment prevention training is a lot of the compliance, like check the box things that we have to put in there because lawmakers decided what the learning objectives are. A lot of that's in the handout, so we are being compliant. And then what we end up talking about in our training is much more around interpersonal skills. Of course, we talk about things like bullying and harassment and what those behaviors look like. So there's a lot of great conversation, but in the end, our training is focused on interpersonal skills and everyone's responsibility for respect. And yeah, Natalie, it should be ongoing. So instead of saying, oh, it's compliance training, everybody come to the conference room, how about you make harassment prevention training part of a longer training program where you talk about empathy and interpersonal skills and intercultural communication, right? How do you communicate consequences? How do you get leadership to agree on consequences? We'll talk about that in a bit because I'm gonna tell you how to coach. Angela says, our harassment training is so boring. Jenny, will you put so we're doing a free harassment prevention training. It's California compliant. Um, it's my gift to the world because I really despise the training that I see out there. So we'll put that in the chat and also Jenny can add it to our um, follow-up emails and there's a link in there. So if you want to go or you can enroll your entire company. It's free. We're going to be doing this once or twice a year. It's just my gift to the world because I really don't like the training that's out there. Oh, and then lastly, complaints of a hostile work environment are often met with action, right? But if it's bullying, then we kind of go, well, that's not against the policy. What's going on? So we've really come to this place of um, like unlawful or lawful, and we kind of just stop there. We keep things in a box. And while you have to do that because harassment is unlawful, I get that. On the flip side, consider that harassment doesn't happen in a little bucket of unlawful behavior. It's something that's happened over time, it's built up over time, and it's happening in your culture. So I want to show you something. So of course, harassment is a form of discrimination. It's unwelcome. It's based on a protected characteristic. This is federal law, so it applies to all of us. I know our states have our own laws, but harassment's unlawful when enduring the conduct is a condition of employment. That sounds like bullying to me, because if you've been bullied, you know it's a condition of employment, especially because we're having this conversation that nothing happens. Secondly, the conduct is severe or pervasive enough a reasonable person would consider it intimidating, hostile, or abusive. So again, in addition to the um, ebook that we're going to send you that has all of the way to calculate and you can make a business case for solving bullying, this is another way to make a business case to say, well, look, it's awfully close to harassment and discrimination. And that example someone provided earlier was great that she worked in a temp place. They didn't like her. They asked to replace with a male, and the male got along just fine. That could be discrimination, right? Yeah, Angela, I was told it's not illegal. I get that. So that's the thing, Stara. I'm just going to keep calling you that. If the bullying doesn't meet the race, religion stuff. So that's what I'm saying. Technically, bullying is lawful, right? If you're equal opportunity a-hole, it's not illegal, as Angela said. But this could be a business case for you to point out just how close bullying is to harassment. The only difference is who you aim it at. But everything under that pink line describes workplace bullying too. Some people take directness and focusing on work as bullying. Well, I think we all have the right to give feedback to people, but then you have to have a culture. The solution is a culture of civility. That's the solution. So here are some other differences and similarities. So protected characteristic, as we said, harassment, it's required, bullying, equal opportunity, you're good. That's your legal loophole. I always joke. In terms of repetition, the law and the research out there it requires repetition, of course, unless it's egregious. And same with bullying. It has to be repeating unless it's escalated to violence. And by the way, workplace bullying and harassment can easily escalate to violence. As an example, one individual I coached used to lean over the table, people told me, and he'd just get right in your face, and he had his eyes bulging out and his chest puffed up, and there was this real physical aggression that came, or this like aggressive nonverbal communication, and that was an issue. That is violence. And yes, Shannon, you can do some choose, this is bullying, this is harassment, but they are the same. Power imbalance. It exists, but it's not required. In the world of bullying, the academics really focus on that power imbalance. And I'm not sure why in harassment we don't, and in bullying we do, but that's the deal. Intent is not required when it's harassment. It's just unlawful behavior, just like stealing, right? Um, with bullying, academics also really focus on intention. But as I said earlier, it's not intentional. The intent is to get the job done. Causing harm is not intentional. And so I'm one of the people who says it's not intentional, and there are plenty of people on my side of that, and there are plenty of people who do say it is intentional. Harassment, harm's not required for you to have a court case, right? And in bullying research, they do tend to really focus on harm. And with the perpetrators in harassment, anybody can be the perpetrator, at least in states like California. And in bullying, we seem to really focus on internal. But you could certainly be bullied by a client, and we've had clients where they had a toxic work environment, and part of the problem was their clients bullied and because of the nature of their work. And so we really tried to talk to the CEO about, making it clear that clients can't bully. And he was just like, nope, they bring in money. They can act however they want, right? Okay, another reason HR is kind of having to deal with, right? The system requires policy violation proof. So HR, you need evidence, witnesses, behaviors tied to policy violations. But bullying isn't so clear cut, especially if you don't have an anti-bullying policy. And workplace bullying is awful, but lawful. The burden of proof is hefty. Targets have to document, recall details, just like they do in harassment. But the accused can much more easily deny and justify and minimize. They'll say things like, people are just being sensitive. I'm just trying to hold people accountable. They don't like hard work. And leaders buy into that versus if it's harassment and the target provides all of these things, it's a lot easier to go, oh, well, this is harassment. We must investigate, right? But with bullying, it's a lot harder because it's not so clear cut. So, as we said, leaders also aren't buying into it. Leaders are rationalizing the behavior. That's just how they are. It's just conflict, right? It's fine. Oh, they have a tough set of people they're managing. They minimize. People are being sensitive or they procrastinate. And these are all things I've literally heard. Well, they're retiring. I had one client, like we have two people to coach. Then we went through the sales process, and on the other side, they're like, we'll just hire you for the one person. The other person's retiring in 2 years. And I'm like, okay, so they're going to bully people for 2 years. That's cool. And I've heard other excuses like this, like it's not the right time. Somebody that they know just had cancer or surgery, or their spouse is ill, so they're probably going to be moving. And so these are the kinds of things that are going on. So here's what I think. HR needs a rebrand. HR hasn't necessarily been great as positioning ourselves as partners. We end up taking on problems instead of coaching people. So I hear this a lot in webinars too, where HR is saying, managers constantly come to me with questions. I'm putting out fires. They want me to fire someone that they've never had a conversation with, right? And HR, we tend to take that on instead of offering coaching. So I would suggest that when people come to you with fires, that you ask yourself, do I need to put this fire out, or can I coach them to teach them to fish, right? So I would suggest you start setting boundaries. No, she's supposed to be Keith. No, she's not sleeping. I think she's looking frustrated, but maybe she's sleeping. So ask yourself, do I need to solve this, or could they? And then you got to put boundaries up, and you could say, look, I'm not going to do this for you. I'm happy to coach you through it and help you get some ideas on what to say, but I'm not taking this on. So you get stuck in administration instead of strategy, and you're stuck tackling problems as they come instead of being able to have the time to pull back and look at things from a strategic perspective. And harassment, as I said, we're treating that as a compliance risk first, but actually it's a people problem first. So let's, think about that. Um, and I know that you're also defeated. Here's another person sleeping and or feeling defeated. And these are things I hear in sales calls. Our CFO doesn't buy into these things. There's no budget for this. I'm gonna have to make a case. Or, it's clear to me that HR isn't seen as a leader. They'll say things like, the executives meet, I'll bring this to my boss, and they'll bring it to the executive meeting, hopefully, if my boss cares about it. So there's not enough not an HR is defeated. It's HR is a rough gig. I know that. And then of course you're overloaded. We see one HR person for 100 to 300 employees. I spoke to one yesterday, 9,000 employees, one HR person. She has a learning and development team, but she's HR. That's too much. That's too much. And then you're juggling all the things and you're lacking specialized support. So I get it. I get it. Yeah, one person for 9,000. I had the same thought that you're having, Caitlin. So here's the deal. You need time, permission, and resources. And you know that. And the problem is that a lot of your employees don't know that. They think that they can go to HR and that HR can just totally solve it. And what they don't understand is that you may not have the time because you're putting out a bunch of fires. Your leader hasn't given you permission and you don't have the budget, right? So let me tell you what can happen if you can get it, though, because we can help. So this is one of the clients I coached. His name was Kyle. He's a news anchor. He brings in more views than any other news anchor in the state across all of the news channels in that state that are like local to the state. And so therefore, he brings a lot of money to the table. His news shows, they can charge quite a bit in advertising dollars. So he's an example of a great performer, but the organization was having a hard time really having a conversation. And what we do is we coach these individuals. And the way this works, and this is the mirror that I'm able to hold up, and why I know that these people don't understand the impact they have. So what we do is we interview 15 people who work with the individual. It's not an investigation. I don't care about the facts. We do an interview and we ask, what's your perception of this person? That's the question we ask. And then, of course, we ask a lot of follow-up questions. So the first time around with Kyle, we take all of our interview notes, we move it all into themes. And so the first time, Kyle, out of all of his statements that we collected, and we move, these paragraphs from half-hour interviews, we move all the sentences around. So it's just one-liners all throughout the paper. Out of all of these comments, 265 of them were negative, 117 of them were positive. And the positive was really around he's good at his job. After coaching with him for about 5 months, we re-interview everybody, all 15 people. Now he has 157 positive comments and only 31 negative. So we were able to hold up a mirror for him by giving him that very clear feedback. And that's why I know the intention to harm is not there. People like Kyle are fairly appalled that this is how they're seen. So I read this to them. I pull it's usually 17 to 20 pages. I pull it up on my screen on a Zoom. So we're reading it together and we go through it one by one. And I find so often that these individuals are saying things like, I did not know that it was this bad. I did not know I was causing so much harm. I did not know that people cried. I didn't know that there's extra processes and procedures being created so that people don't have to interact, with me. So they don't know. They really don't know the impact they're having. So where do we go from here? What do you need to do next? Here are some tips for you. One, reframe toxic behavior as an organizational problem, whether it's harassment or bullying or anything else. Keeping in mind that people are functioning, think about that oil model. Individuals are functioning along the side of the organization's behavior and the leadership's behavior. So, for example, if you get a hostile work environment complaint, investigate the facts because you have to, but also understand the organization's role. People didn't, just wake up one morning and decide to sexually harass somebody. It has been coming over time. And what happens is people complain about it, HR can't fix it. And then all of a sudden there's a hostile work environment complaint. So don't just investigate the facts, but take a look at what are we doing as an organization that this person had permission to engage in this behavior. Um, Consider doing a culture survey as well. So if you are doing an investigation for a hostile work environment complaint, do that, but recognize that that's only focused on the facts of that scenario and it's only focused on kind of the one person or that department's story. A culture survey will help you understand the cultural reality and why that behavior was allowed to flourish. And then you can solve it as a risk problem. Also, intervening earlier. So, normalizing informal intervention from everybody. So, coaching people who come to you to complain, facilitating conversations to help solve conflict among people, assisting managers in intervening. And here is this toolkit. So, we're going to give two of them away. But we do have this course. It's $249. This download, which you'll have the link in the email, follow-up email you get, you'll have the link to download this. This is all of my slides for building a speak up culture training. It has a facilitator's guide in it. It has handouts for your employees. And it has videos from myself and from some of my other facilitators, really offering you tips and tricks for delivering this training well. So stop taking it on yourself. Ask the people in your workplace to protect their culture too. So I do hope you'll consider buying this. It's $249 for something we charge like minimum 10 grand for, right? So please do take me up on that. Something else to do. Let's see. If a culture survey is conducted, employees may not answer truthfully. Yes, Laura. And I can tell you that we are able to offset that because we're external. So I say yes to your statement when you're doing something like Culture Amp, where you have access to all the data. People fear that you can pick through it. When we do surveys, it's our own software that comes to us, and leadership gets a PDF report, and we make that very clear in our communication. And so we're able to, we have never had anything less than 85% response rate, and we get a lot of dirty, ugly details. So consider who's doing the culture survey. Okay, here's some other tricks for you, and I think this can change your life. This script. So we're in HR. We get focused on facts. We get focused on like, did that happen or not? Step away from that for bullying. So you can say something like, I'm getting complaints about perceptions of interactions with you. I'm hearing from people you're coming across as abrasive, condescending, whatever the word. What are your thoughts? This is a coaching conversation. And of course, they're going to say, I didn't do that. I don't do that. That's their fault. Who said it? I can't fix it unless you give me details, right? And you're going to say in response, you're not going to back down. You're going to say, look, the only fact I need is this perception of you. The fact is, several people perceive you this way. And so we have to figure out why people perceive you that way. Can you think of something you're doing that causes it? And don't back down. This is the same kind of conversation I have. And of course, they'll say, well, you're the expert. You tell me. And I'll say, well, we've looked at the feedback. Like you got to tell me what you're doing at work. I don't work there. I just took did some research for us so we could have some ideas of how you're perceived and get some clear information. So don't back down. Like there's gotta be something you're aware of that you're doing, and they'll start to figure it out. One other piece that I like, maybe it's a little bit passive aggressive of me, admittedly, but I do find that people's jaws drop when I point this out. When they brush it off as like they're just being sensitive. They're the younger generation. They're just being sensitive. Point out that their behavior is also showing sensitivity. So I hear you're saying people are being sensitive, and I'm also hearing from others that sometimes your words and tone are condescending. That means you're reacting to something. You're being sensitive when you react that way. So help them because they don't like emotions. They don't think emotions belong in the workplace. So help them see like you're actually being emotional. Okay. I always suggest a consequence. I know you need your boss's permission. I actually don't take a coaching client unless there's a consequence in place. So the consequence can really help people understand that this change is required. And the way that we coach CEOs to introduce the coaching to the toxic leader is that the way the consequences are presented is essentially, we've allowed this behavior for a long time. It has to come to an end. So I have to tell you that I'm putting a consequence in place, but I fully expect not to have to use it because you are a high performer and because I found you a coach who is specifically an expert in coaching people with similar complaints as you have. So I really don't think I have to put the consequence in place, but it is there and I will use it if I have to, right? And it doesn't have to be termination. It could be, these are things we've seen in the past, being removed from a team. I coached a doctor who was on like a high visible committee at her hospital. It was good for her career. She was going to be removed from it. Or even something as simple as it doesn't have to be like a consequence. It could be I'm taking something away. It could be this is as far as you're going to get in our organization unless this behavior changes. Like you've hit the ceiling here in this organization unless you're willing to make change. Can you withhold a bonus or a raise? Definitely talk to your employment law attorney, but I've seen that as well. We had one, it was the CEO and she'd hired us to coach her sort of right hand person, and this was right around when bonuses were going to be coming, and so she told this person, I'm going to give you part of your bonus because I know you need it for the holidays, but you're going to get the other side, the rest of your bonus on the other side of coaching. Yeah. Okay. So, something else we're going to give you at the end is this culture ROI scorecard. So, maybe it's not always money. If you can find a way to show the impact this person's behavior has on the business, that's going to be really helpful too. So, there are 10 business outcomes in this handout. So, fill out the QR code at the end and you will be able to get a hold of this as well. This is another tool that we're really proud of. So real quick, how does coaching work? It answers 3 questions. What are the negative perceptions? What's causing them? And what can you employ to eliminate them? The process looks like this. We interview 15 people. We get the feedback, deliver it to that person. So now there's a mirror they absolutely cannot run away from. We coach the toxic leader. We also coach the boss. They get 3 coaching sessions over the course of coaching the toxic leader because they're part of the problem. And then we re-interview everybody on the other side to show change. So for example, we put everything into themes. So these are the types of themes we see, and we put all of the words of the people they've worked with or that they work with underneath each theme. It remains confidential as to who said what because we've taken, our half hour of notes for each person and moved it into sentences. And then here's an example of a coaching conversation. One of this guy's themes was that he was very egotistical, and his comments within there said things like he really likes to name drop and that he played basketball with like Leonardo DiCaprio's cousin, and people are like, we don't care about that, right? So he says, well, we talked about, building rapport with his team, and he says, well, they don't tell me what they did over the weekend when I ask in our Monday meetings. I say, of course, this is coach. Well, I'm curious. Why do you think that is? And all that egotism came out. They're ashamed. They know they can't compete with all the fabulous things I do. They know I hate binge watching. And I said, well, let's look at your feedback and see what people have to say. So, what can you do differently? Because the perception is you're egotistical, and your answer was very egotistical. Um, right, Robert? Yeah, I like that's a good, I might have to make a skit out of it for my Instagram. And so then I said, well, what can you do differently to eliminate this perception? And then he comes up with his own answers. So another story for you. This is Mercedes, one of my star students. She was a leader in insurance. She's really great at her job. She'd been at this company for 13 years, so she had a lot of organizational knowledge. And once again, we did the interviews. 78 of her comments were positive, 121 were negative. And on the other side, she had 120 positive comments and 20 negative comments. So we had helped her negativity drop. Yes, QR code coming your way. It's right here. Go ahead and use the QR code. Sorry, I'm a little over. Her name really was Mercedes. Yeah. Okay. Jenny says it was hard to choose the winners of the book. Melissa Myers, you're the book winner. Robert and Michelle Lewis, you are the winners of the toolkit downloads. So if you could put it in a private chat to us, put your address for the book so we can mail it to you. Or you can email us at info@. So get those slides going. And just to let you know, we have more webinars coming. We're going to be doing these every month. And I also wanted to put something out there. We are focused on trying to earn 10 leaders as clients, 10 transformations in 90 days. And so if you can get any permission to have me speak to your leader, or if you know somebody in your world who could really use coaching for our toxic leadership coaching, please email us info@civilitypartners.com. 10 leaders, 10 transformations, 90 days. And if you hang on for one more minute, I will give you the activity codes. Actually, Jenny, could you put the code in there so that we can keep the Slido up? We've got a SHRM activity code and an HRCI code for you. Sorry, I ran a little over time. And do follow me on LinkedIn, Catherine Mattice. I do constantly every Wednesday, we put an e-newsletter out, and we'll be posting more about our upcoming webinars. And all of that, of course, will be in your follow-up email as well. 10 leaders, 10 transformations, 90 days. Get me on the phone with your leader. I can talk them into letting me coach the toxic leader. And let's see if we can get 10 leaders transformed in 90 days. Thank you all. I'm glad you enjoyed it, even though the topic was rough. You're all so welcome.